guys, we are here, our first ever podcast. Have Sean joining us today. I haven't
Hello.
thought of a name for our podcast as yet, but it's gonna come as we speak. So today we are going to talk a lot about life in Western Massachusetts. That's where Sean was born and raised.
Correct.
And we're going to talk a little bit about mindfulness and meditations. Right now, right before then, we just had a 5-minute meditation when we listened to a song named Great Bell Chant. That song was by Thích Nhất Hạnh. He's a very famous monk in Vietnam. Yeah. So Sean, tell me, what are your feeling after listening to the music?
Generally, it's always nice to arrive in a place with some sort of grounding, and I think we don't, in our culture, get to some place and take that time to sit down and feel present before we start to interact with people or with the environment in that space. And yeah, it feels good to hear Thich Nhat Hanh's words in that meditation and feel very, very comfortable and held. There's I heard, I forget who it was, but it was probably on another podcast, but they talked about how when they arrive in a place, they first look for a body of water to jump into, because it helps them feel grounded and like they've arrived. And oftentimes you don't always have a body of water to jump into to feel like you've arrived, but sometimes meditation can take the place of that, and you can sink into a place through meditation instead of a body of water or whatever.
Got it.
Yeah.
So going to meditation, learning about it and practicing it, there's a lot of the people that have experienced higher self, and they say that meditation is in every moment of your life,
Right.
every single second moment in your life,
Right.
whatever you're doing, it can be meditated, even like washing the dishes or
Right, exactly.
that even small task when you really commit to that moment without thinking to the future or the past.
Right.
Do you believe that?
Very much so. I think that is probably the main, like, where I put my faith in meditation is in that belief that any single moment is a opportunity for awakening. And yeah, I guess I'll talk about a little bit about my history when getting
please.
into meditation. I was at Umass Amherst. I was a senior, and I had my mom was a yoga teacher, so I was definitely
I didn't know that.
Ashtanga yoga,
Yeah.
and I had done that growing up through high school, kind of sporadically, and then I got more into it in my college years, and that was more based in Hinduism, which has a deep spiritual tradition that is kind of always in dialogue with Buddhism in a lot of ways. And so I was certainly primed to meditate through yoga practice. And it wasn't until so Sam Harris is a intellectual. He has a podcast, and he also has a meditation app, which launched my senior year of college. And I heard about it through his app, or through his podcast rather, and downloaded it when he first launched it. And it came at this point in my life where Umass is a very big party school, and I was kind of getting lost in drinking and doing drugs, and generally having a hard time trying to feel like I fit in or content, or finding a relationship that I felt would have made me feel better. And I was drinking a lot, and I was partying so much that I almost got kicked out of school for various reasons. And it kind of came to a point where I had made one too many mistakes and was getting disciplined by the dean of students, and almost got kicked out. And I realized that I was not really living a healthy life. And this app, Waking Up by Sam Harris, came out, and I started meditating through the guided meditations of that course.
Yeah.
And it really helped. And I stopped hanging out with some of the kids that were putting me in those situations where I made poor decisions. And I met my partner Noli, and she didn't drink, which was a really big help to kind of transition away from that sort of lifestyle. And meanwhile, I was meditating and listening to Dharma talks, and using the app extensively, meditating almost every day for about a year or two. And the way the app was structured, it has many different talks with different teachers, anywhere from, Dzogchen teachers, which is the Tibetan school of Buddhism, right?
Mm.
And then Joseph Goldstein, which is more of Vipassana.
Yeah.
And I think I spent a lot of time with Vipassana.
Yeah.
And that's where I learned a lot about the Buddha's teachings.
Yeah, Sean, I'm going to pause you.
Yeah.
So, Umass Amherst.
Right.
That when you were partying and drinking.
Yeah.
Is there any particular moment to that journey that you was like, oh, I'm not, I need to change, or there's something is not working out for me? Is there any particular moment, maybe after the party, or?
Well, so this is probably where there needs to be more context, right? So
right.
The story is that I had just turned 21, and I didn't go out the night of my 21st birthday. I actually had dinner with my parents and got a drink legally for the first time, and it was all well and good and responsible. And then the following night was a Friday, and so that's when all the kids at UMass go out. And I had two sets of friends who I was hanging out with. One were the more relaxed type who didn't really go to the bars but they still drank and partied, and so I started my night with them on that Friday. And I, was already pretty drunk by a certain point at the night, and then we went downtown, and I saw the other group of friends, and sort of in some sort of miscommunication, I left the group of friends who I was with, who weren't going to the bar and went to the bar with the other group of friends. And in the drinking culture of UMass, when you turn 21, you go to the bars and people buy you drinks. Mm-hmm. And so I went to the bar, my friends bought me some shots of whiskey, and before I knew it, I was blackout, and flash forward 8 hours later, I was waking up in what they call the drunk tank in the Amherst police station.
Got it.
And so I was in a cell in the police station because they told me afterwards that they found me passed out on the side of the road in one of the back streets behind the bars. And I didn't have my phone. I, didn't have anything on me. The police took it, and I banged on the door to let, it's like, hello, let me out of here. Like, what is going on? Very confused, very scared. A police station cell or any prison cell or whatever, it's just a concrete slab and fluorescent lights and sort of dehumanizing in a lot of ways. And so finally they let me out, and I didn't have my phone, so I couldn't call anyone to pick me up. And I walked 6 or 7 miles that morning back to my apartment. And yeah, it was a very, very profound experience of waking up in a jail cell and then walking home. I quickly realized that the school was going to find out about this because Amherst PD, Amherst Police Department, shares information with students that they pick up.
Yeah.
And so I got contacted by the Dean of Students, was completely honest and transparent with them, and because of past violations of the code of conduct through other instances of partying that did not result in me getting too drunk, but just kind of breaking rules, which are different, more minor stories, but obviously led to this situation of having my fourth strike be this incident. And I was transparent with them, and a day or two later, they emailed me that they were going to suspend me. And then I quickly went to a school lawyer, which they provide for all students, and talked with the lawyer, and he asked me, so you're 21 and you just got too drunk and they put you in medical custody because you were asleep on the side of the road? And I said yes. I gave him the story, and he said, so since you're 21, it was technically a medical emergency, and Amherst Police Department broke the law by sharing that information with the school.
Yeah.
Because you can't share medical information without consent.
Right.
And so I brought that information to the school. They quickly dropped the incident.
Yeah.
And I realized, okay, I just got really lucky.
Yeah.
If I hadn't been 21, I would have been kicked out of school.
Right.
And so at that point, I was like, well, I cannot do this again.
Yeah.
I really need to change.
Yeah.
This is my senior year. This would be really bad if I got kicked out after almost getting kicked out, So, and so many things happened. As I just sort of explained briefly, that I met Noli, my partner, who didn't drink, and I started meditating, which were probably the two biggest changes that came about. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it was very scary experience in a lot of ways.
Right.
Yeah.
I think throughout our life, there's a lot of failures, right? There's this moment that makes you really angry about what you have not done or what you have done, and it changes you very much so. And there's this drive force that pushes you to move forward.
Right.
But without the painful experiences, life can be very meaningless, and
Right.
I have experienced that myself, and it changed me. I mean, sure, you still make mistakes,
Right.
but without the experiences, you just won't become better.
Right.
In a lot of way. But yeah, thank you so much for sharing the story.
Yeah. Happy to.
Tell me about that walk from the police station back to your apartment, right? That was like a few miles, 5-6 miles.
Yeah, 5-6 miles on a busy road. I worked at a restaurant right next to the Amherst police station.
Yeah.
And as I was walking out, it was 6 or 7 in the morning, and I was hungover. My eyes were probably puffed up. I probably looked pretty rough.
Yeah.
And I ran into the cook who was going into work.
Yeah.
This guy Miguel, an immigrant from El Salvador, a really good guy, and we ran into each other as I was walking out of the police station, and he was like, "Are you okay?" And I kind of laughed it off, and it's just like, there's that phrase in English, you got to face the music. It's sort of, I don't know where it comes from, but to face the music is to face the consequences, and open yourself to other people who will then kind of, I don't know how to explain the
Of
phrase
course,
that
yes.
well, but
I'm sure.
yeah,
Just when things happen, you take it.
Right.
You face it.
right,
You face your problems.
right,
You did something wrong. You say, "I'm sorry."
Right.
I apologize,
right,
and move on.
right,
Right, and then that's the only way you learn. But if
Yeah.
you just keep blaming yourself, blaming the situations,
right,
or even blaming someone else, it's not helping.
right,
It's not helping. We are humans. We make a mistake, and
right,
that's fine. I mean, I used to be a very sensitive guy who often think a lot about how people think or what I should have done.
right,
Living regrets is really when you almost self-destructive.
right, yeah,
Yeah. But anyway, so meditations come to you very naturally, right? Like religions.
right,
When you at a low point of your life, or when you feel like you cannot find peace within, then normally people go inside, internally.
right.
So you were saying about Vipassana. Can you tell me a little bit more about what you have learned?
Yeah. So with a lot of the techniques, Sam Harris learned Vipassana and Dzogchen, and he, in his guided meditations, gives a lot of the different techniques through noting the breath, or noticing thoughts, or noticing sensations in the body. And those are all very powerful techniques to use, and I definitely still employ any one of those meditating when I meditate now. But I'd say what was more important, the meditating is obviously the practice that helps you. And once you meditate enough, you kind of create that that base of mindfulness to return to in stressful moments. But what really helps is listening to Dharma talks and listening to people like Joseph Goldstein or Jack Kornfield or Ram Dass, and just, obviously the concepts only work to a point. It's not concepts are kind of what create our anxiety and create the mental suffering.
Yeah.
But also when you're given the concepts of Buddhist thought, of impermanence, of suffering, of non-self,
Yeah.
all these things that are useful concepts, it really gives me a deeper sense of understanding of what I'm trying to do when I meditate. And one of the most helpful concepts for me is the idea of impermanence, and that things change, and the only thing that is certain is that things change. Another way of saying it is the only thing that doesn't change is that things change, and that's, to me, such a powerful truth to hold on to. Even it's in some ways it can kind of get a little scary, but that's also just the desire for attachment, to not want things to change and feel like things are changing too quickly, time is passing too quickly, and but within all that, within these talks of these meditation teachers, that is the only way to find freedom, is to know that things are always changing, and then where can you go to, right? Like, the place you can go to is mindfulness and the observer, the one who's watching everything change. What is called like the deathless, or the undying observer within you, which is so great.
So you mentioned observer meaning observing like the sensation or how you feel. It's a key, I think, is with meditations, to be able to noticing emotion, but without getting attached to that emotions.
Right.
Let's say when you sad, right? You tell your body, you kind of detach yourself from your body,
right,
and maybe set aside and look at yourself like, oh, you are sad.
Right.
So knowing that you are sad, knowing that emotion is there, or even you are happy, you are excited,
right,
but at the same time don't get attached to it,
right,
to be able to kind of move on without being too attached to it. And that is something that I learned recently, that knowing myself now after 27 years of living, I know that I have flaws, right? I'm not the most confident person in the room, or when sometimes I get anxious for like these reasons. But and then now, when to meditations and mindfulness, I know when that emotion is about to come, and I overcome it before it even comes.
Right, right.
So let's say when I do something, let's say for an example, when I in like a gym class, right? Sometimes maybe when I want to do something in middle of the class, let's say leaving class early, or even like, then I would feel weird because people are judging me.
Right.
Right. I would feel anxious because the teacher might seeing me as, just not finishing the class.
Right. Right.
But now, knowing my body going to react to that thought in that very particular reason,
right,
I identify it, and then I be able to just, oh, okay, I know that you're going to react this way, but
Right.
I'm just going to do it nevertheless.
Right. Yeah.
And that helped me a lot with it's kind of moving on to life.
Right.
You know, to be able to really tell my mind, here's what we need to do right now.
Mm-hmm.
So don't worry about other things, but just focus in this moment and do what you're supposed to do.
Right.
So that is really good.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like
Yeah.
in those situations, it's really interesting because through my own practice, I definitely experience the same thing. You can kind of anticipate when you're going to feel a certain way, and then you feel that way, whether it's anxiety or sadness, and it becomes sort of comical. Like you almost want to laugh at yourself, right? Because it's just so typical, and it feels like you're just such a habitual creature that it's just like it's hard not to laugh at yourself and be like, well, here I go again, feeling this way. But even still, oftentimes it's very hard to have that sort of humor in a situation.
You're right. And you're 100% right. Because we are so used to the way we act and react. And we don't even know our limit.
Right.
And but still, that's so funny. I literally laughed myself yesterday. What happened? When I keep thinking about this incident that happened yesterday, and I was still not quite over it.
Right.
But then at this point, I had like an epiphany moment yesterday when I was like, holy shit, dude. Like, this is so funny.
Right.
You're acting like this again.
Right.
And I literally just like laugh out loud.
So I've been in Arlington since September of 2022, so just 6 or 7 months. And I actually lived in Arlington, or rather I lived in Somerville before the pandemic, not with Noli, but we were dating at the time, and she lived here at that time as well.
Yeah.
And I was working at a restaurant, living with random roommates. Wasn't too happy or fulfilled with my living situation or my job, and it was quite hard. And then the pandemic came in March of that year, 2020, and Noli was like, you should come and live with me for, until this blows over, until this is done. Obviously, it wasn't going to be done for a while, the first stage of the pandemic. But I did live upstairs with her for about 2 months in lockdown, so quite a different experience than living here now. But so I already felt, when I moved in here in September, I already felt like I've lived here before, which was nice, and I knew the neighborhood, and I knew the house felt comfortable to me. And yeah, it's way better living with a partner, especially after a certain amount of years have passed and you've grown closer together. But it's certainly very different from Western Mass. And like anything, there's pros and cons to both. I think in Western Mass I had a lot more of my community that I grew up with and know much more intimately than a lot of my community out here. And it's a very small town there, so you you see all the same people at all the same stores.
Yeah.
Because there's only a dozen stores.
Yeah.
And, the culture is very different. Everyone knows each other, like I said, and one of the hard things, though, about the last 2 years of living there, where it was sort of feeling stuck in life and in my career.
Yeah.
As a person who works in the trades. I was painting houses then. And there's a way in which you can sort of forget the world in a small town, and not feel satisfied, at least for me. I know a lot of people love it because it's slower, it's a slower pace of life. But I found that, I was drinking more there and I drink less here, and that's something that's kind of I'm always on the guard of. But yeah, Arlington's great. It's hard not knowing as many people. But
yeah. But tell me about Western Mass. So you was brought up there, born and raised. What was the name of the town?
So I was born in Springfield, Mass, which
yeah.
So Springfield's more of a city, but when I went to Catholic school there, a big Irish Catholic family.
Was it St. Patty Day?
Yeah, yesterday. Friday was St. Patrick's
Friday.
Day. Yeah.
2 days ago.
2 days ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you celebrate?
Yeah, I did. I wore green and I went to a concert and had a Guinness.
Yeah.
So.
Had a Guinness.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Had some friends in town as well from Western Mass, which was nice. It's always nice to bring the Western Mass here. But yeah, I had the big Irish Catholic family, and my cousins were my main friend group when I lived in Springfield. And then when I moved to Chesterfield, where my parents had built a house, I kind of had to make new friends.
Yeah.
Which, as a young person, it's quite easy to do, I think, because you're less stuck in your ways, maybe, or less inhibited socially. You kind of, maybe not for all young people, but I made friends quick enough, and yeah, it was much more rural than Springfield, which was a change. But when I think about it now, I actually have spent more time of my youth in the rural part of Western Mass than in Springfield, which is the city. Yeah. So I definitely have more years living rurally than in a city. And
how would you describe the sceneries? Were you very closest to nature?
The closest neighbor was a half-mile away. Nothing but trees around my parents' house.
Yeah.
You have to cross a river to get to my parents' house. It's not a big river, it's just a small stream.
Yeah.
But there's a bridge anyways, and it feels very secluded. And there's a big ridge line above my parents' house.
Yeah.
With some beaver ponds that freeze in the winter and that we would go skating on.
Yeah.
It was a very special place. Huge pine trees. There's a mountain that you can see from my parents' deck called Smith's Pyramid. And you can hike up it. And really one of the more beautiful parts that I miss is the Westfield River, which is I think one of the most protected rivers in the state of Massachusetts, in that there's a lot of state land that runs along the river and very little human impact.
So when you were there, living, within natures. So you do carpentry now, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
So was that a lot from your childhood when you become very handy? And
Well, I did have a knife, and I would whittle sticks
yeah,
and build forts.
yeah,
And I had a hatchet I would cut down little trees with, me and my cousins. And I never really thought of myself as becoming a carpenter until the last few years. But I do know that I like to build things. I kind of identify more. I identified more as a writer and someone who wanted to write and pursue that for a while. But it's hard to make money as a writer.
right.
You can't really make a living as easily. You have to probably go to school longer. You can teach, but those options didn't seem appealing to me, and for various reasons. But yeah, it's funny how I got into carpentry. I was on YouTube one day, and I had painted houses all through college in the summertime, and sometimes in the winter doing interior painting. But I didn't want to keep painting either when I was home 2 years ago. And I figured, well, what can I do? And I had a cousin who does carpentry and knew that he would hire me, but I didn't have any experience. And I was on YouTube and I found a video of a person timber framing, which is a sort of more traditional carpentry.
Yeah.
With hand tools and wooden pegs, so no metal fasteners, no nails, it's just all wooden joinery. And I thought, wow, that's really incredible. How do I learn to do that? And funnily enough, one of the best schools for learning how to timber frame was only 30 minutes from my parents' house.
Okay.
And so I took a month-long course and then worked for an instructor after that. And only in the last year have I transitioned it into more general carpentry. But it really is, they talked about this in the timber frame course, because you're using hand tools, you're working with your hands, like the connection of working with your hands to, like, your actual satisfaction with what you do. It's very, working with your hands is very gratifying.
Right.
Building things is very gratifying, and it brings people a lot of purpose. It's much more different than sitting at a computer and working in an office, and at the start of a day doing carpentry, you get a piece of wood and you get your task, and by the end of the day, hopefully that piece of wood is installed and now part of a house, and it's going to live there forever, and you really want to do the best work you can.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Working with your hands is a beautiful feeling. We get this pair of hands, and back at our ancestor, they was all out hunting and building things, and I guess I didn't have to think a lot about, like, the big dream and where you're gonna go in life.
Right.
But right now is human being have a lot of requirements to be able to, let's say, make it. Right?
Right.
People say, "Oh, how do I make it?"
Right.
Make it meaning what? Getting rich and
Right.
being successful, and really grinding that grinding culture.
Right.
Hustling.
Right.
Entrepreneur is also a big word in the recent years, and I respect that a lot. you know.
Yeah.
But then sometimes when you can really work with your hands and create things that minimal but meaningful, is a beautiful feeling.
Yeah.
How do you envision yourself in, let's say, 5 years from now?
Yeah, so it's one of those things where I do enjoy planning that far ahead, but it's so hard to tell what can change from then to now, and there's many things that come into play. I definitely see myself doing carpentry for the next 5 years or longer, or the next 20 years, or whatever. But I think one of the biggest variables is where I will be doing carpentry, and you know, and within carpentry, within the company that I work for now, there's opportunity for growth to become a lead carpenter or to become a project manager, which are all different levels of responsibility, but a better wage than what I get now just as a crew carpenter. And so I definitely want to grow with the company that I'm working with, because my employer is very fair. You know, I'm going to get a company vehicle at some point, which is really awesome, and so there's a lot of benefits with this company, and certainly a lot of benefits working in a city where there's more, where wages are higher.
Yeah.
But kind of my ultimate dream is to move back to Western Mass at some point, and that is complicated by my relationship, and it's a variable. It's kind of a looming tension. You know, where are we going to live when we get older? And yeah, so it's sort of scary, but it's also, you know, as I said at the beginning of this answer, that it's also something that you can't really plan for all the time, because you just don't know what's going to happen in 6 months or a year, and so it's nice to dream, and it's nice to think about all these things, but I also feel like if I set my expectations too high of what I want my life to be like, then it's inevitably in one of those areas I'm going to get disappointed,
Right.
and I'm going to feel resentment towards people for things not going the way I would have wanted them to, which, you know, kind of comes back to this talk on meditation and mindfulness. It helps so much in not getting attached to where I want to be in 5 years, because I can plan all I want, but it probably won't go the way I plan.
Yeah. How about writing?
Yeah, the writing is that's something that I feel.
What do you like to write? Fictions,
poetry,
yeah.
prose, just kind of, it's, you know, it's sort of loose. Sometimes I try and write stories and I get, you know, 20 pages into a document, and then I lose the thread in my mind. I don't know where to go.
Yeah.
I love writing poems. You know, it's easy. You know, you can just feel like you've written a poem just by spending 20 minutes on something. And often I feel like I don't necessarily care if anyone ever reads my writing. I think for a long time in high school, I was like, I'm going to be a poet. People are going to read me. I'm going to get published. But that dream is hard to hold on to, and you can get dissuaded in various ways from holding on to that dream. But I think the more I make my writing first and foremost for myself, the happier I'll be with writing. And I've kind of held that belief for a while now. And when I feel comfortable enough, I share my writing with certain people, certain friends, just like, hey, look at this, I wrote this. And yeah, but I would love to publish a story one day, or write something long enough to edit it and then think of it as like a long story or novel, or but there's things that get in the way, like, you know, my job takes up a lot of my time, and a lot of people don't work and just write for 5 hours every day and still don't make it as a writer, you know. So it's interesting.
It's actually, you know, it's actually we all have a lot of different dreams, right? And if we just let other things get in the way of it, right, they say, okay, job is important, right? Making money is important. Maintain your relationship is important.
Right.
And then that's it, like this podcast, right? This is not what I do. I don't make anything out of this. But I have to invest my time and effort into creating something that I think I'm gonna like.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to enjoy it, or it's just going to bring me any values or whatsoever. But there's a saying, if there's a will, there's a way.
Yeah.
Right. So in the midst of a lot of requirement in society, in your relationship, you still have to somewhat maintain what you think in your passions, and your hobby.
Right.
Even with writing, don't expect it going to get published. But I would say it's a good goal.
Right.
To be published.
Right.
And the only way for you to achieve that goal is that you keep working toward it.
Exactly.
Right? Write a story, send it to like 200 magazines.
Yeah.
Maybe like 2 get back to you with no.
Yeah.
But the rest, they won't even get back to you.
Right.
But then maybe 2, I read your story, we're not gonna publish this.
Right.
And that's okay. So you're gonna keep working on it.
Yeah.
So I think, it's just maintaining your hobby and really loving yourself is important.
And believing in yourself.
Believing in yourself. And the only way when you can spread love to others people, to make others feel inspired by you being inspiring, by you really give yourself chances and opportunities to do what you love. Right. So I would say, you know, even this is for you and also for myself, how busy you can be, how hungry you can be, how thirsty you can be, how much mental pain you can take.
Right.
But it's gonna worth it. It's gonna be very, very worth it.
Yeah.
When you just take a chance and don't care about the result.
Right, and it takes courage.
Yeah.
You know, it takes courage for you to ask me to be in a podcast.
Yeah.
Right, and it takes courage for me to send my work.
What if you say no? Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Totally. So glad I said yes, but because this is great. But yeah, you know, I've probably only sent out my work to a dozen places or a dozen competitions. I've not done it that often because it is scary. You know, you're like, there's also a little bit of work involved in rereading your piece and editing, and that's the work that one has to do, though. To, you know, it takes courage to even do that work, to then send it in. Yeah. Do you ever write?
I have. I I think my most proud work is probably the 2 short story
Oh, very
that
cool.
I have written.
Yeah.
But I would love for you to read it and give me some feedback.
Yeah. Are they in English or?
They did, yes. I would expect you to translate. But yes. But anyway, this is probably a good place.
To stop.
To end.
Yeah.
So guys, thank you so much for watching. As you see the first, but there will be many more.
Yeah.
So stay tuned.
Thanks for having me, Vin.
Yeah, thank you, Sean, so much for joining us today. And we hope to see him again in our next episodes.
Yeah. Thanks, Vin.
Thanks, Sean.
Yeah. Cool.